What would you do if you gave your entire adult life to your family's legacy only to find out they handed it to someone else without telling you, "Hi, my name is Rebecca Mitchell. I'm 32, and for the past decade, Mitchell Construction wasn't just where I worked, it was who I was. I was 8 when I first learned the difference between a floor plan and a blueprint. I'd sit under my dad's oak desk doodling on the backs of client invoices while he talked about permits and deadlines on the phone. At 12, I worked the reception desk in the summer answering calls in my best professional voice. He'd smile at clients and say, "That one's got the Mitchell business sense." And I believed him. He told me over and over again, "One day, this company will be yours." So I made it my life. I majored in business management, minored in construction administration, and turned down job offers from some of the biggest firms in the state just to go work for my dad the Monday after graduation. While my college friends took gap years and backpacked through Europe, I was waking up at 5:30 a.m. to prepare bid packets and update project schedules. I became the operations manager the face clients trusted, the person who fixed mistakes before they became disasters. I didn't take vacations. I didn't take sick days. I lost 2 relationships because the job came first. I missed weddings, baby showers, even my own college roommate's bachelorette party, because there was always another deadline, another crisis. But I never resented it. I was building something, building my future. Then there was my sister Paula, 2 years older, beautiful, spontaneous, emotionally magnetic. Where I was spreadsheets and work boots, she was art installations and silk scarves. She spent most of her 20s floating across Europe collecting lovers and degrees she never used. We stayed in touch, of course. I loved her, but we were different galaxies. That's why I was genuinely surprised when she came home after a bad breakup in Florence and said she wanted to get involved in the family business. Even more surprising, my father welcomed her with open arms, created a creative director position out of thin air, gave her a freshly remodeled office, and let her work 25 hours a week. I shrugged it off. Maybe he wanted to spend more time golfing. Maybe she needed direction. And I admit her marketing revamp wasn't bad. Still, I handled the real work. I kept the company profitable, efficient, respected. That's why what I found that Friday afternoon felt like a punch to the stomach. We were reorganizing the office, one of Paula's bright ideas that turned our streamlined filing system into chaos. I was digging through the legal cabinet looking for a Riverside project contract. Instead, I found a thick manila envelope labeled Mitchell Construction Ownership Transfer. My first thought, it had to be some old paperwork, maybe from when my grandfather retired. But the date said otherwise, March 15th of this year, 6 months ago. I flipped it open. Legal jargon blurred in front of my eyes, but a few lines jumped out, bold and brutal. Hereby transfers 75% ownership stake to Paula Elizabeth Mitchell, remaining 25% retained by Thomas and Linda Mitchell. My name wasn't mentioned, not once, not even in a footnote. For 10 years, I had worked myself to the bone, and they handed my future to someone who'd barely been back 6 months. I stood there, frozen, unable to breathe. The air felt thin, the lights too bright. Then I heard footsteps. It was Eleanor Johnson, our office manager, the woman who used to babysit us during summer site visits. She saw the folder in my hands. Her face dropped. "Rebecca?" She started voice trembling. "You knew," I asked, barely a whisper. Eleanor looked at her shoes. Her silence was louder than any answer. "He wanted to tell you himself." "When the time was right," she murmured. "It's been 6 months," I snapped, heat rising to my cheeks. "When exactly is the right time to find out your family stabbed you in the back?" She reached out to me, but I stepped away, folder clutched to my chest like a shield. The office around me blurred as my world tilted. I don't remember grabbing my purse. I don't remember walking to the parking lot. I just remember driving. Red lights, honking horns, I barely registered any of it. I got home, dropped my keys on the floor, and sank onto my couch. The folder was still in my hands. I stared at the blank wall in front of me, the one where other people might hang family photos. Mine was empty. just like the promises I'd built my life around. What had I done wrong? Was I too aggressive? Too focused? Had my loyalty been a flaw I called the only person who wouldn't lie to me? Allison, my best friend since college. The moment she heard my voice, she asked Becca, "Are you crying? What's wrong?" "They gave it to her," I said flatly. 75%. "They gave it to Paula." A stunned silence. "What?" "I found the paperwork," I said numbly. 6 months ago, everyone knew, everyone but me. "I'm coming over," she said. "Don't move." I didn't. I couldn't. When she walked in 30 minutes later, she found me sitting in the dark with the folder on my lap and mascara streaked down my face. She didn't say anything. She just hugged me. That hug broke something in me. I cried until I had no tears left. Then I made a decision. If they thought I didn't matter, then fine. I'd stop giving them my labor for free. Paula could handle it now. After all, she was the owner. Right. But the real shock was still to come, because they had no idea what they'd just lost. Sunday came too fast. Allison and I had spent Saturday plotting. She was furious on my behalf more than I had energy to be. We made a list of options, none of which included returning to work like nothing had happened. I hadn't emailed, called, or said a word since I walked out. And nobody from my family had reached out either. It was like they were waiting for me to calm down and come to my senses. But they didn't know the version of me that woke up that Sunday morning. Something in me had cracked open, and not in a broken way. In a clear, ice-cold way. I wasn't showing up for closure. I was showing up to let them see exactly what they'd thrown away. I arrived at my parents' house at 6:00 p.m. sharp. Their suburban brick home looked exactly the same manicured lawn, seasonal wreath on the door, that familiar smell of pot roast wafting from the kitchen. It felt like walking onto a stage set for a play I no longer wanted to star in. Inside, everything was too normal. My mom greeted me with a warm smile and a hug I didn't return. "Dinner's almost ready." "Your favorite." Paula was setting the table all cheerful and domestic. "Hey sis, I texted you about the new client pitch. Didn't hear back." "Oh," I said flatly, "just needed some time offline." My father glanced up from the folder of documents in his lap. "There you are. We've got some great news about the Westridge project." He said it like nothing had happened, like I was still a loyal cog in the machine, like they hadn't ripped the floor out from under me. I nodded. Can't wait to hear it. But inside, I was fuming. And I wasn't going to say a word until they finished their perfect little family dinner pretending everything was fine. I wanted to see how long they'd keep up the act. Dinner was agony. Paula went on and on about some new marketing campaign she was developing. Dad nodded along, clearly impressed. Mom tried steering conversation to safer topics, the garden club, new neighbors, someone's new baby. Me, I just pushed food around my plate and offered one-word responses. Not a single person brought up the elephant in the room. Not one mention of the ownership transfer I had in my purse. After dessert apple pie I used to love but couldn't even look at. I finally spoke. "I need to talk to all of you. Together." Silence. Mom froze mid-reach toward the dishes. Paula blinked. Dad put down his fork. "What's going on, Rebecca?" Mom asked, her smile beginning to crack. I reached into my purse and pulled out the folder, set it gently in the center of the table. "This," I said, "is what's going on." My father's face stiffened. My mother gasped. Paula looked like a child who got caught cheating on a test. "Where did you get that?" Dad asked, tone sharp. "Does it matter?" I replied. Voice icy. "Were you ever going to tell me? Or was I just supposed to keep working 80-hour weeks until I collapsed from exhaustion, never knowing my sister owned the company I was building?" Mom reached for my hand, eyes teary. "Sweetheart, we were going to tell you. We just didn't know how." I yanked my hand away. "The right time to tell me would have been before you signed the papers, not 6 months later." Dad cleared his throat, slipping into business mode. "This was a strategic decision, Rebecca. The industry's evolving. Paula brings new vision. We had to make tough calls. Tough calls, I laughed bitterly. You mean handing over the company I built without even a conversation? You're too much like me, Dad said. Too focused on the old way of doing things. We need fresh ideas now. Then teach me. I snapped. God, Dad, if you wanted me to evolve with the company, why didn't you talk to me? I would have listened. I always listened. We thought you'd understand, Mom said, voice small. Understand what? That I was only ever good enough to run things, but never own them. Paula finally spoke. Becca. I didn't ask for this. Don't I cut her off? Don't play innocent. You signed those papers. You walked into that office every day and smiled at me, like everything was normal knowing you owned it and I didn't. It wasn't like that. Really, I turned to Dad. She's been instrumental, right? Her expansion plans. You mean the ones I presented 3 years ago, the ones you rejected because they were too risky. But when Paula says them, they're genius. The room fell silent. Dad looked cornered. I want to be clear, I said, standing. I am not your workhorse anymore. I'm not your backup plan. And I'm not your martyr. Dad's voice was hard. What exactly are you saying? I quit. You can't quit, he snapped. We have projects starting next week. The Maxwell bid is due Friday. I grabbed my bag. Let Paula handle it, I said. The silence was deafening. Even the kitchen clock seemed to pause. My mother began to cry. Rebecca, please, we're family. No, I said. Families don't do this to each other. I turned toward the door. I'll email my formal resignation tomorrow, I said, without looking back. Don't worry, I'll be professional, unlike some people in this room. As I closed the door behind me, I heard Paula call my name. I didn't turn around, because in that moment, I wasn't their daughter. I was just the woman who had given everything and gotten nothing in return. But they were about to see exactly who I became without them. And I promise you what came next. No one expected it. Monday morning hit differently. For the first time in over a decade, my alarm went off at 5:30 a.m., and I didn't move. No mental checklist, no pre-coffee adrenaline rush of deadlines or client calls, just silence. I lay there staring at the ceiling, realizing I didn't belong to Mitchell Construction anymore. And without the job, without the identity I'd tied my entire adult life to. Who was I? I eventually got up out of muscle memory, made coffee. I didn't drink, opened my closet full of tailored blouses and steel-toed boots and closed it again. There was no need. Instead, I slipped into yoga pants and an old college sweatshirt I hadn't worn in years. By 7:00 a.m., I'd already checked my phone half a dozen times. Nothing. No call. No email, no please come back. Part of me was relieved. The other part, devastated. They really believed the company would survive without me. At 8:30, I picked up the phone and dialed someone I hadn't spoken to in years, William Barnes, my college mentor, a brilliant engineer who now ran his own firm. He'd tried to recruit me multiple times over the years, but I always said no. Loyalty, I told him. Family first. He answered on the second ring. Rebecca Mitchell, he said warmly. Either the world's ending or Thomas finally pushed you too far. I let out a laugh, hollow and humorless. You could say that. Over the next hour, I poured it all out, the ownership betrayal, the silence from my family, the confrontation. William listened without interrupting, just as he always had, occasionally making noises of disbelief or disgust. When I finally finished, there was a long pause. That's unconscionable, he said. After everything you've done for that company? And they didn't even have the decency to tell you. Was I stupid? I asked, voice cracking. Was I just blind this whole time? No, he said firmly. You were loyal. But loyalty should be earned and returned. What do I do now first? He said, shifting into mentor mode. You protect yourself. Document everything you've contributed, every process, every project, every client you've built from the ground up. You need a clean, irrefutable record. I grabbed a legal pad and started writing. Not to take it, he added, but to prove your value wherever you go next. By noon, I'd drafted a comprehensive list of my contributions to Mitchell Construction. Every major contract I'd secured or managed, every operational improvement I'd implemented, every efficiency model, revenue report, and client relationship that existed because of my work. I was careful. No company secrets, no proprietary data, just cold, hard facts. I also made note of the things I'd intentionally kept out. My personal client notes, my intuitive relationship systems, the undocumented shortcuts and checklists I'd developed over a decade. Those were mine, and they were powerful. That afternoon, I opened my laptop and drafted a resignation email. It was clinical, professional, detached. I gave no emotional clues, just noticed that I was taking my 6 weeks of accumulated, never-used vacation time immediately and would not return. Per my contract, I was entitled to every hour. I set an automatic out-of-office reply, "I am currently on extended leave and unavailable for company matters. Please contact Paula Mitchell for all inquiries." Then I turned off my work phone, slid it into a drawer, and closed it. Done. By evening, I'd looped in Sofia Rodriguez, my friend and a savvy employment attorney. She reviewed my contract and gave me the green light. "You realize you're ridiculously marketable, right?" she said, scanning my resume. "Any construction firm in the region would throw money at you." I blinked at that. I've never even updated my resume, not since college. "Well, you're going to now," she said with a smile. "This is your chance to stop waiting for their validation and build something that's yours." That night, under the cover of darkness, I returned to Mitchell Construction one last time. I waited until 9:00 p.m., late enough that no one would be there but early enough not to trip security alarms. I still had my key and my code. I wasn't stealing anything. I was collecting what belonged to me. My office felt sterile, ghostly, like a shell of the life I'd lived inside for so long. I boxed up personal photos awards, reference books. I left every stapler, every company-paid laptop or file untouched. I wanted nothing from them that they could use against me. In the back of my desk drawer, I found an old photo from our company's 25th anniversary celebration. Dad's arms around both Paula and me, all of us smiling. Was it ever real? I placed the frame face down in the box. Before I left, I scribbled a note on a yellow Post-it for Eleanor, please. Forward my final paycheck to my home address. Thank you for everything. Then I left my keys beside the note and walked out. The cool night air hit my face like a slap, and for the first time in 10 years, I felt free. The next morning, I slept in until 9 a.m. I made breakfast, sat on my balcony with a book I wasn't being paid to read. It was peaceful. But by that afternoon, the silence became deafening. No calls, no emails, no texts. Surely they'd noticed by now, right? And then they started trickling in. First, a text from Paula. "Hey, where did you save the Anderson contract revisions? Can't find them." Then another. "The Westridge client is asking for you. What should I tell them?" And another, "Dad's freaking out about the Maxwell bid. Are you coming in this week?" I didn't respond to a single one. By day 4, my dad finally called. "Rebecca." He barked into my voicemail, "This is ridiculous. You've made your point. Now stop playing games. We have a business to run. Delete." My mom's voice was gentler, guilt-laced. "Sweetheart, we're all so worried. This isn't like you. Let's talk. Okay, we're family. We can fix this. Delete." I was done being the family's emergency contact. Let them figure it out. But by day 6, the real fire started. Maxwell Anderson himself called my personal phone. And the moment I heard his voice, firm, gruff, unmistakably disappointed, I knew things were falling apart. What he said next would change everything. Maxwell Anderson didn't make small talk. His voice came through the phone like gravel, sharp and direct. "Rebecca." "What's going on over there?" I froze on my balcony coffee mug halfway to my lips. Maxwell Anderson was the CEO of Anderson Construction, our largest client, representing nearly 30% of Mitchell Construction's annual revenue. And for the past 5 years, I'd been his sole point of contact. I'm on extended leave," I replied carefully. "Is there something I can help with?" "That's not what I asked," he growled. "I've been working with your sister. She's trying. But she doesn't know our specs, doesn't know our crew, doesn't even know which model we agreed to use on the steel frame. I'm about to start a $12 million project, and I need someone who knows what the hell they're doing. I stayed silent. It would have been easy to step back in, to pick up the pieces like I always had. But this time wasn't like the others. Mr. Anderson, I said slowly, I'm no longer in a position to manage your project. If you're uncomfortable with the current leadership at Mitchell Construction, you may need to consider other options. There was a long pause. I see, he said finally. Well, if your situation changes, you know how to reach me. Then came the line that made me catch my breath. Loyalty to good project managers trumps loyalty to companies. Remember that. I sat there, phone still in hand, the weight of his words sinking in. Someone saw me. Someone respected me. And that was more than my own father had done in a decade. Exactly 1 week after I walked out, the phone rang again. Dad. I stared at it for a moment, then almost impulsively answered. Rebecca. He barked, his tone frantic. Anderson's threatening to pull the contract. $12 million. He says he won't work with Paula. You need to come in tomorrow and fix this. I blinked. The nerve. The audacity. A week ago, I would have dropped everything to save the day. Now I leaned back in my chair, letting silence stretch between us. Let Paula handle it, I said evenly. What he snapped. This isn't a game. No, I said, it's not. It's a business. You made a decision. You gave it to Paula. So now she handles it. Damn it, Rebecca, you're being unreasonable. No, I said firmly, for the first time in years. I'm being logical. He was mid-rant when I ended the call. Less than 30 minutes later, my doorbell rang. I peeked through the peephole. It was my father. For the first time in my life, he looked shaken. Not angry, not in control, just shaken. Tie crooked, hair rumpled, eyes sunken from what looked like a sleepless night. I opened the door without a word and stepped aside. He barreled in like a storm cloud, pacing my living room like a man on fire. Do you have any idea what you've done? He snapped. Clarify, I replied, arms crossed. Anderson's out. Westridge is threatening to follow. Paula can't make sense of half your documentation. She's panicking. The Maxwell bid is incomplete. The office is in chaos. And that's my fault, I asked. It is when you walk out and leave us to deal with the consequences of your own choices, I cut in. Funny how that works. He stopped pacing and glared at me. You're enjoying this? No, I said truthfully. I'm processing it. There's a difference. He let out a frustrated exhale and sat down on the edge of the couch, suddenly looking older. I didn't come here to fight, he said softer now. I came to offer you a solution. My brow arched. Chief Operations Officer, he said. Full autonomy. Salary double what you were making. Corner office. I nearly laughed. So, same job, more stress. Still under a boss who owns 75% of the company. You're offering me a cage with golden bars. It's a promotion. It's crumbs, I said. You're asking me to save you again. But I'd still report to Paula. He was quiet. I'll make this simple, I said, voice steady. 40% ownership, board position, standard executive hours. That's what I want. His face went pale. That's impossible. Paula already has majority control. Then she can sell some back, or you and Mom can give me a piece of your 25%. Figure it out. You're not being reasonable. I gave him a cool smile. Westfield Engineering offered me a job yesterday, operations director. Salary matches your offer, plus profit sharing, plus normal hours. And guess what? Maxwell Anderson already told me he'll follow me if I go. His eyes widened. You wouldn't? I haven't accepted yet, I said, but you're running out of time. He stood abruptly, face twisted in disbelief. You'd leave your family for the competition? No, I said, meeting his gaze. You left me when you gave away my future. I'm just choosing not to build yours anymore. He stood there for a long moment, calculating. Finally, he said, I need to speak with your mother. And Paula will call you. I nodded. You have until Wednesday. As he walked out, I didn't feel smug. I felt clear. This wasn't revenge. This was a reckoning. And for once, I wasn't playing defense. I was writing the rules. Wednesday came. I dressed with quiet precision, no power suit, no armor, just a navy blouse, slacks, and the calm conviction that I no longer needed to prove anything. I arrived at Mitchell Construction's boardroom right at 10 a.m. They were all already there, my parents, our corporate lawyer, and Paula. She looked nervous, more than nervous. She looked remorseful. Rebecca, my father, started motioning toward the empty chair. "Thank you for coming." I took my seat without a word. Across the table, Paula wouldn't meet my eyes. That alone told me everything I needed to know. The lawyer opened his folder. "We've reviewed the current ownership distribution and legal options," my father cut in. Before we get into documents, Paula wanted to say something. She swallowed hard. I didn't know how bad this would get. I thought her voice cracked. "Dad said you'd always be in charge, that this was just a technical thing. I didn't understand what I was signing. I didn't know you'd leave." I tilted my head, and when I did, she winced. I panicked. I tried to handle it, but "You were always the one holding this place together. I see that now." It wasn't a full apology, but it was the closest thing I'd ever get from her. The lawyer continued. "Paula has agreed to relinquish 35% of her stake, transferring it to Rebecca. That would bring Rebecca's ownership to 35%, Paula's to 40%, and the remaining 25% stays with Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell. Rebecca would also be appointed to the board and resume a senior leadership position." I held up a hand. "One correction, I'm not returning to the same job." My father frowned. "You want a new title, I want autonomy," I said. "Director of Strategic Operations. No direct reports, no fire drills. I'm here to guide, not save. 40 hours a week, no weekends. Any overtime is billable." He opened his mouth to argue, but my mother placed a hand on his arm. "She's earned it," she said simply. "We nearly lost her." I blinked. That might have been the first time she'd ever publicly backed me. I looked at Paula. "This restructuring, it's not a reset. It's a redefinition. We can't go back, but we can move forward, if we're honest." Paula nodded. "I'll sign whatever's needed." We signed the documents that afternoon. Ownership transfer, title change, revised bylaws. When it was done, the lawyer said, "Congratulations. This board now has 2 women with majority influence. First time in company history. Dad looked like he'd swallowed a lemon, but he said nothing." That evening, I walked through the office again. Employees smiled at me, whispered, a few even clapped. Maxwell Anderson's assistant sent me flowers with a note. "The grown-ups are back in charge. Welcome home." But it didn't feel like home. Not yet. It felt like neutral territory, like a garden that had been overrun and now I had pruning shears. I stopped at the window in the old operations wing. Sunlight fell across the construction yard outside, golden and warm. Years ago, I used to watch the crews pour concrete and dream about building skyscrapers. Now I was rebuilding something much harder trust. With Paula, with myself, and with the version of me I lost somewhere between overachievement and obedience. That Friday, Paula knocked on my office door. "Got a minute?" she asked. I motioned for her to sit. She hesitated, then said I found the specs for Anderson's bid. I revised the draft proposal. "Thought you'd want to look." She handed me a neat folder, color-coded, annotated clean. It wasn't perfect, but it was good. "Thanks," I said. "I'll review it." She stood to leave, then turned back. "I know you don't trust me yet," she said, "but I'm not trying to take this from you anymore. I'm trying to be worthy of it now." For the first time, I didn't feel anger toward her. I just felt tired. But maybe tired was where healing began. I nodded slowly, one step at a time. She smiled faintly. One step. 6 months passed. Mitchell Construction was not the same company anymore, and I was no longer the same woman who once burned herself out trying to keep it afloat while everyone else reaped the credit. Maxwell Anderson returned with full force, bringing not just his $12 million project, but 2 referrals to other major clients. We were now booked out 14 months in advance. Paula, she surprised me. She started shadowing foremen on site, took safety certification courses, asked questions she never bothered with before. We weren't best friends, but we were finally co-leaders, different strengths, different styles, same mission. Dad kept his distance. He still held board meetings, but there was less fire in his voice, less thunder. Maybe he was tired. Maybe he knew the torch was already passing hands, whether he liked it or not. And then came the phone call. A recruiter from an international firm, West Point Infrastructure Group, had been following my work. They asked if I'd consider heading up a new U.S. division starting salary 3 times what I currently earned. Remote flexibility, full control of operations. They didn't want Mitchell Construction. They wanted me. For 2 days, I didn't tell anyone. I walked the halls, watched Paula in meetings, sat quietly on the back deck of our project site, watching a new generation of workers pour foundation into land I had once mapped myself. And then I made my choice. I invited Paula to lunch. We sat across from each other at a quiet booth, sunlight filtering through half-drawn blinds. "I'm stepping down," I said. Her eyes widened. "What?" "Why I've been offered a role that gives me something I never had here," I said. "Freedom, focus, peace. But things are finally good," she said softly. "We're building something real together." I smiled. "Exactly. And that's why I know you can do this without me now." She looked like she wanted to argue, then stopped and nodded. When she asked, 2 weeks. My last board meeting was short and unceremonious. I handed over my shares, retaining a small advisory role. The company would keep my name on the books, but I'd be gone. Dad didn't say much. He simply stood, extended his hand, and said, "You built more than any man I ever hired." That was the closest I'd ever get to a real thank you, and somehow it was enough. On my last day, I left behind a letter in the old break room. It read, "To every woman who has ever been told she's too responsible, too intense, too much. You are not too much. You are always more than they were ready for. Build anyway. Burn bright anyway. And when they finally notice the light, make sure they know you lit it without them." I walked out into the Denver Sun Keys in my hand legacy behind me. Today I run West Point's U.S. division from a Mountain View office in Boulder. My hours are sane. My heart is steady. My work respected, recognized, and mine. Sometimes I still get texts from Paula, updates, photos, requests for guidance, and sometimes I reply, not out of duty, out of choice. Because I've learned something I wish I'd known years ago. You can forgive people from a distance. You can lead without being the one who stays. And you can walk away with grace even when they only learn to value you as you walked out the door. This wasn't revenge. This was resurrection. And it started the moment I stopped asking for their permission and gave myself my own.